What up? Man, it feels like I've been streaming all day today, because I guess I kind of have. I'm Ari Temkin. We're just after noon right here on Phantom, the New World Order of Sports Media. I want to thank everybody for joining, for being part of the broadcast, whether you're watching on YouTube, on Facebook, on Periscope, or on Twitch. Thank you for being part of the broadcast. Let your voice be heard. Comment, share, retweet, post. Any other way to get involved? There's a lot to get to today. We have a lot to discuss. Free agency bonanza is upon us. And some probably bad news for the San Antonio Spurs. How will they react? What will be next? Greg Zuniga in the house on Periscope. What's going on? Also broadcasting live on Facebook through the San Antonio Spurs Spirit page. Shannon Lott says hello. Tony Arena says, here we go, in 3, 2, 1. Boom, we're going, Tony. Also on the Around the Association page, no matter where you're watching, get to your post your comments, we'll get to them. Wally Anderson gives me the starry eyes or the heart eyes. What's going on? Jeremy Mandel in the house. What up, Jeremy? Thank you for joining us today, Jeremy, at Cover 3 San Antonio. Good turnout, good crowd, fun times at Cover 3 San Antonio, 1604 in Huebner for the Mexico-Brazil match, which did not end very well for Mexico, but fun nonetheless. Tyler Moody in the house. What's going on? All right, so the big news yesterday was LeBron James. He signs the, as you can see across the bottom of your screen, 4 years, $154 million deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. And the first thing that stands out is the 4 years component of it. Because, LeBron, so long as he was with Cleveland, basically gave himself the option to get out of a deal after a couple of years. And so, he signed, I believe, with Cleveland, what was it, 2 1-and-1s where he could opt in. So he was there for, 3 years? 4 years? Is he there for 4 years or 3 years? And, every time he gave himself the 1-year deal with the option for the second year to opt out, which put, obviously, the onus on Cleveland to consistently be on edge, to be trading and making trades constantly to put the Cavs in position to win championships. Now he makes a long-term commitment to LA, much in the same way he made to Miami. He left Cleveland initially and signed a 4-year deal with Miami. Now he leaves Cleveland, signs a 4-year deal with Los Angeles, which, and if you followed some of the stories that have been going on, around this, you'll know that LeBron has told and talked to Magic Johnson and basically said that, hey, let's build this thing out. Let's just not make any quick decisions on any roster moves. Let's build this thing out, which is sort of speaking in many ways straight to Kawhi Leonard and the San Antonio Spurs, like, hey, we don't have to make a move right now. We don't have to make a move right now and bring in Kawhi Leonard. No reason to, compromise our future ability with Ingram and Lonzo Ball. And so, that is the most interesting thing to me, is the pressure that was on Cleveland to constantly make moves to surround LeBron with teams that could win today. It's not as pressurized as it is in Los Angeles. Obviously, there's pressure to win because he's LeBron, but there is no desperation to go out and make a move, to sign Kawhi, to trade for Kawhi, to make other potential moves, and it's that, I think, was the most surprising thing about the deal. I'm not surprised he ended up going to Los Angeles. Erica Cardosa says hello. Hi, Erica. How are you? Thank you for joining us on the San Antonio Spurs Spirit page. Alistair D says hello. What's going on? Shannon Lott says, why don't Spurs go after Boogie or Avery Bradley? What's going on with Bertans? Is he coming back? I'm sure Bertans will be back. I think the Spurs put a qualifying offer on him. As far as Boogie, I don't see that happening at all. Boogie, in fact, could be on his way to LA, which I think would be a bad move. Boogie, in the era of pace and space, doesn't seem to really fit many teams in the style for which they play. I think with LeBron, you pair Boogie with LeBron, that'd be a horrible move. If you remember years and years ago when the Cavs brought Shaq in, and I know this is not the same, but it's sort of similar from a standpoint of the last thing you want when if you have a team with LeBron is to clog up the paint and to not create an environment for good separation. So I think that would be a horrible move to bring Boogie onto LA, but that could potentially be there. Derek Kirby in the house. What up, Derek Kirby? How are you, buddy? Derek Kirby from the Dallas Prospect page. If you, Larry Mannix is a Dallas fan, Larry, make sure to like the Dallas Prospect page. Derek Kirby doing fantastic work over there, either at Facebook, on Facebook or on YouTube. So subscribe to the Dallas Prospect, one of our partners here at Phantom. Ooh, that's kind of cool. My coffee mug looks translucent with this green screen. Shows how well I've maneuvered this green screen. Tyler Moody likes my shirt. What's going on? Hit the share button. And again, want to remind everybody, we're broadcasting live on multiple channels. On San Antonio Spurs Spirit page, on the Around the Association radio page, and also on Periscope, on YouTube, and Twitch. Amazing. We're here with the technology. Gabe Gonzalez in the house. What's going on Facebook? Let me just check out all the other pages. Nothing doing on YouTube. But make sure to subscribe to our YouTube page if you haven't already. And then Around the Association, no comments there. On the San Antonio Spurs Spirit page, no comments there. Erica Cardosa says, I'd love to see George Hill back. Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'm very excited to see what the Spurs' approach is going to be throughout the rest of the offseason. You know, obviously, most of the rumors are linking the Spurs to making a trade with the Lakers for Kawhi Leonard. It seems as though the offers on the table have diminished, significantly, because there seems to be more pressure on the Spurs to get rid of him and get something for him, and obviously a ton of pressure, or less pressure, I should say, on the Lakers because they already have LeBron. And this is credit to LeBron. This is what I said a few days ago. I didn't understand why LeBron was waiting on other stars to show up in LA. Like, if you want to go to Lakers, go ahead and go. Other stars will come. And that's exactly what he's done. He made the decision independent of Kawhi Leonard, independent of Paul George. And, I think when we talk about Kawhi Leonard, there was a lot of discussions, and thank you everybody for hitting the share button. When we talk about Kawhi Leonard, there was a lot of discussions about, are the Spurs going to offer him the Supermax? And, if you're new to this, the Spurs didn't offer him the Supermax. And it was kind of shocking because I never thought that was a point of contention for the Spurs. I always thought that the Supermax was going to be on the table. It was whether or not Kawhi wanted to stay in San Antonio, play for that money, or go elsewhere and get less money. But as these stories have sort of filtered out, it seems like Woj has been all over it, that the Supermax has not been on the table. That the Spurs met with Kawhi, basically said, that they're not going to offer him the Supermax. The other components of those discussions, not exactly public, but I certainly wonder if they asked Kawhi to sort of, have his uncle removed from the picture here because they didn't like dealing with his uncle. And they basically said, you're not going to get the Supermax. We're going to offer you this contract. Oh, and by the way, any way we can deal with an actual agent, not your uncle. I think that's what spurned, Kawhi's unhappiness, unease, if you will, with the organization. It's what I think. Oh, the chat's been hidden. All right. If you have any comments, make sure to comment, whether you're watching on Facebook, whatever Facebook page you're watching, Around the Association, San Antonio Spurs Spirit page, or on Phantom, on Periscope, on YouTube. Post your comments. Let's get this thing rolling. James Rodriguez in the house. Mario Vasquez in the house. Millie Lev says hello. Millie, how are you? Derek Kirby says, I think the Lakers are going to land Tyreek Evans soon. He also met with OKC last night. Both places would be good fits for him. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Again, I was always under the impression LeBron was going to go there, and he should. And, then other stars, other players would want to go there, obviously. So it wasn't like LeBron would go there without Paul George and Kawhi, and they'd fill out the rest of the roster with Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, and Kyle Kuzma. I figured they wouldn't be done in free agency. But here's the other piece, too. The Lakers obviously have to be very, very careful. Because, let's just say they aren't able to strike a deal with the Spurs. So are they going to, oversaturate contracts in the books? Now, obviously going into luxury tax isn't a problem, but, can they afford to bring on a Kawhi Leonard? How much less would Kawhi Leonard be willing to take? So it's going to be interesting to see how the Lakers maneuver the rest of free agency, knowing that they obviously have Kawhi seemingly in their back pocket, but obviously they have to maneuver the salary cap in order to make it work. As would Oklahoma City, who my guess is they're going to entertain the stretch provision on Carmelo Anthony and take his contract off the books because they're already into the luxury tax, paying a very, very high luxury tax bill. Alex Morris says, could we see D12 go back to the Lakers? I don't know why any team that's good would want Dwight Howard on their team. Also, Greg Zuniga commenting on the Periscope page. what about the rumors that Kawhi Leonard could sit out all next year? Man, would that be interesting, right? I almost want to see the Spurs not trade him just to force Kawhi's hand. Because look, you sit out 2 straight years in the NBA, and that's, people watching this, that's what Stephen A. Smith said on First Take last week. I believe he said that on Friday, that Kawhi Leonard could sit out all of next year if he's not traded, which James Rodriguez says, read today he's willing to sit out all year. Can he do that? Yeah, he certainly can. He's well within his rights to do it. And I don't know that it would diminish, what's interesting is I don't know that it would diminish the market for him at all, but I just, man, to sit out basically 2 seasons in the NBA and then like that, you're missing a ton of time. I don't know how you can just, you can work out and try and do whatever you can to stay in shape, but there's a difference between playing in actual NBA games and basically sitting out. What would that amount to? Over 150 basketball games? That'd be crazy. Carlos Martinez on the San Antonio Spurs Spirit page says, what's up? Says, if Kawhi sits out, can the team fine him? I mean, it'd be a very interesting thing, right? Because this is basically what happened all this year. The Spurs said he was healthy. Kawhi's people said he wasn't healthy. So he sat out, right? But so it would go back to him basically saying, I'm not healthy and I'm sitting out. And then obviously how the rest of it would play out as far as what would the NBA say? It would be very interesting. It would obviously, even diminish how Kawhi would sit. It's, let's just say, obviously that there's just not a lot of happiness with Spurs fans and Kawhi Leonard now. I can't even imagine what it would be like to watch him basically go to New York for the entire next regular season. Connor Beauchamp on the Around the Association radio page says hello. What up, Connor? How's it going? Hit the share button if you wouldn't mind. David Alejandre says, what a piece of shit move. Yeah, that would be... Alex Moore says there's a clause in the CBA that prevents that. If you could expand on that, that'd be fantastic, and I'd appreciate that. James Rodriguez says, and LeBron will be 1 year older. Yeah, the thing is, it's a very gray area when you look at it, right? Because you have a guy that, what if he says he's hurt? And that's why he's sitting out. It's one thing to just basically say, I'm going to sit out the entire year. It's another thing to say, well, I've got an injury. That's the reason I'm not playing. So, look, it would be a very, very, very interesting subplot to the season. And Carlos Martinez says, would Kawhi's legacy be tainted for this? Well, of course it would in San Antonio. And, I think if you want to look at what his legacy would be, throughout the rest of the NBA if he sat out for a second consecutive season, basically. I think for the rest of the NBA, it would be how does he play? How does he eventually come back and play? For the Spurs, the legacy for Kawhi is basically, unless Kawhi Leonard comes back, does a complete about face, I'd say pretty confidently that the legacy of Kawhi Leonard in San Antonio has already been written, and that's not a good one. This is a guy that was seen as being the next coming for the San Antonio Spurs, the guy that could, bring them, back to prominence in a sense, right? And a guy that was going to be cut from the same cloth as Timmy, not wanting to be a star, not wanting the limelight, right? Like all of those components, all of those things we've always thought of with Kawhi. Obviously, he was the second coming for the Spurs. From Spurs fans, he was viewed so positively. And, obviously that entire mantra was almost completely diminished, throughout this season. But even those that held out, Spurs fans that felt like, well, he's just hurt. He's not trying to come back too soon and compromise his ability to cash in on that max contract. Obviously now, it seemed either he was actually hurt and he was very unhappy with the Spurs organization, and that's the reason why he wants out, or he was hurt at one point. He was unhappy with the Spurs organization and the way that they handled the injury, the medical staff, the questions about the diagnosis, and it's obvious there was friction from the start. I think the Spurs tried to play it as well as they could, but they were frustrated, upset because they didn't really have control over his rehab. They didn't really know what was happening. You know, I do have on good authority that there was an actual date scheduled for him to come back. That the Spurs were told he's going to come back on this date. And when that date came, and that was actually the date that Lisa Salters reported he would return. When that date came and passed and he didn't play, that's when Tony Parker said the things that he said. So Manu Ginobili said the things that he said. I guess that's when they said there was a date. They thought there was a date. Kawhi came into the locker room. You know, Manu and Tony were like, "What's the deal, dude? Are you going to play this year or not? Do you want to play with it? You want to be on this team?" And he was cornered. Who knows what he said? And then I think, that's obviously at a point in time when the relationship deteriorated probably beyond repair. Or maybe it didn't, and maybe, the Spurs obviously being frustrated with the entire situation this year, didn't offer Kawhi the Supermax, didn't want Kawhi's Uncle Dennis being involved in the future, dealings of this organization. So, it's just been a very, very weird situation. Tony Reyna says, "I'm tired of this. I wish he would get on TV and speak for himself." Everybody does, but he won't. So we're left sort of having stories filter out through his uncle and agent and other parts of the media. By the way, if you're watching this, hit the share button. We're going to talk NBA free agency. I think LeBron going to Lakers obviously kills the Spurs. One, because, you had Golden State in the West. Now you add LeBron to the West. It's the first time in LeBron's entire career he's going to be in the Western Conference. You still have Houston in the West. So, it's obviously bad news for the Spurs because of how the depth of great teams they have, throughout the Western Conference. And then on top of that, I think, the Kawhi going, or rather LeBron going to the Spurs, LeBron going to the Lakers, thank you. LeBron going to Lakers kind of takes away some of, and especially on a 4-year deal, kind of takes away some of the leverage the Spurs might have had within negotiations of the Lakers on trying to make a deal work. For Kawhi Leonard, and and some of the reports indicate that that Magic and LeBron have basically met and said, "Hey, no pressure, no rush to get something done to bring in Kawhi. We can wait this thing out. Let's build it." Something obviously a luxury that the Cleveland Cavaliers did not have while he was there. David Alejandre in the comments says, "No one player is bigger than the team. What do you think about Marco and Rudy signing?" Yeah, I think it signals the Spurs want to remain competitive, want to remain a playoff team, despite the fact that they're, the team's best player, arguably, is not going to be with the team next year. Either he's going to be potentially sitting out, or in another uniform, or who knows what's going to end up happening with Kawhi Leonard. Akeem Dean says, going to be awkward in that locker room. Shannon Lott says, "Let the man go. If the Spurs try to make him play, then they'll look like they're bullying him, try to get good players for him and wish luck. I think it'll be a bad move to try and force him to play up to Supermax. Why don't Spurs just pay him?" I'll get to that coming up in a moment here. Carlos Martinez included a link on the San Antonio Spurs Spirit page. It's a link about the CBA. Cynthia Ramos says, "If he was that unhappy, then he should have been a man and say it. Why are the drama making time Spurs look bad, look like the bad guys?" Joan Wilson says, "Don't care. Just get him out of San Antonio to the Eastern Conference." Cynthia, I think that's a great point. He's had controversy surrounding him the last 10 months. He's spoken publicly twice. And he's said like 8 sentences in speaking publicly twice. If you wanted to be the face of a franchise, you're going to have to speak publicly. And, controversy surrounded him. He's refusing to speak publicly. So all these stories continue to leak out from sources. So there's nothing that's basically being associated with him, directly, but just a bunch of Kawhi's unhappy, Kawhi wants out, Kawhi wants this, but nothing we've heard from him. And if he does end up with the Lakers, he'll be in a good situation because LeBron's the face of that franchise and Kawhi can be his Robin. And, he could be the Scottie Pippen, and he won't have to speak publicly as often as LeBron will, and he won't have to be the face of the franchise. And, he probably won't end up with the endorsements or the shoe contracts that he thinks he should be getting. And maybe more important than that, he's not a free agent this offseason, so he can't make a decision on where he wants to go. And obviously now the question is, what are the Lakers going to do? Do they plan for signing him next year so they don't, Derek Kirby brought this up before, but Tyreek Evans is going to be in town visiting the Lakers about signing. He's going to want a long-term contract, but if you're the Lakers, you kind of caught in between. Do you wait and keep the space open for Kawhi next year? And to that end, if you're Boston or Philly, do you make a play for him? I don't know why you wouldn't, if you're Boston or Philly. I mean, I get the obvious, which is that, well, they could give up assets and then lose him. But, I mean, if you're Philly and, you give up some assets for him, but you make a play for him to stay there long term, and, I mean, you're probably the favorites in the Eastern Conference with Kawhi and Embiid and whoever else you don't have to trade. So, I mean, you look right now, the presumptive favorites in the Eastern Conference are, Toronto. Although it looks like all indications are they're going to blow it up. And so that's kind of interesting, right? If you're Toronto, why would you blow it up? Fly Lattori on YouTube says they should just let Kawhi go to the Lakers. They can get some decent future pieces for him. But that's the question, right? I don't know if they can anymore. That's the problem, is they might not be able to get anything of major value from the Lakers anymore, depending on how the Lakers play this. Because, LeBron seems to like some of the assets that they have. Alex Morris says pretty much if the player decides not to play, he's rendering services. He's not rendering services, which could be a breach of contract. His contract will still be in the Spurs' hands past next year if he sits out this year. Vanjie Bustos in the house. Chris Castor says trade him to Charlotte for Kemba Walker, Nicholas Batum, and draft picks. That's not a bad deal at all. I like that. Hit the share button. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ari Temkin. We're live on Phantom. We are the new world order of sports media, delivering live sports content to the digital spaces. YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope. That's wherever you are, we are. We are Phantom. So check us out on YouTube and on Facebook at facebook.com/Watch Phantom. Thanks to our partners, the San Antonio Spurs Spirit page. We're on broadcasting live. Thanks to all those watching. Derek Kincaid on the San Antonio Spurs Spirit page says, Parker should have kept his mouth shut. This Tony's problem, always hating, but it's at his point of no return. Lakers are not getting Kawhi this season, so Kawhi gets to warm on the bench. I know that people are upset about Tony Parker's comments. Toshiro Matsui says, Hi, amigo. Hi, amigo. How are you? To me, that's not the reason. Kawhi wanted out. So this entire season transpires the way it does because Kawhi Leonard didn't want to be in San Antonio anymore, but he didn't want to say it publicly because, I don't know, he doesn't want to say anything publicly or didn't want to hurt feelings. So I think Tony Parker calling Kawhi out gives him a good, legitimate reason to say he wants out, but that's not, if Tony Parker doesn't say this, it's not like he's coming back. And here's the major issue, guys. The Spurs didn't offer Kawhi the Supermax. They weren't going to offer him the $219 million Supermax, which would have paid him $50 million in the final year of the contract. Because the Spurs love Kawhi Leonard, but not completely enamored with the entire situation that transpired this year. So the Spurs, they didn't offer him the Supermax. And somebody earlier commented, why not offer him the Supermax? Because here's the deal. They could offer him the Supermax, he can take it, and then demand a trade after one season. And then where are the Spurs? Then they have no leverage. Plus, the way this entire season went down, with his uncle calling his shots, and his uncle having all of these, his uncle basically handling this entire situation. I mean, the Spurs probably met with Kawhi and said, we'd like to be dealing with an actual agent now and not your uncle, and we're not going to offer you the Supermax. And that's when Kawhi got all pissed off. Yeah, Cynthia Ramos says exactly. Kawhi was making the decision before Parker said anything. Carlos Lerma on the San Antonio Spurs Spirit page says, even trade for Ingram and Kuzma, or even Kuzma alone, I'd still be happy. Man, how tough would that be, right? Like, if you're a Spurs fan and you thought there was a point where they're going to get Ingram, Kuzma, and 2 future first-round picks, and they only end up with Kuzma? I mean, Boston has to be offering something better than that, right? Philadelphia has to be offering something better than that. The reports out of Philadelphia were that the Sixers basically made Embiid, Fultz, and Simmons untouchable, which I find kind of interesting. Because with Fultz, he might not have higher stock than he has right now. Obviously, they want to see him play with all the issues he dealt with last year. If you're Boston or Philadelphia, or even Toronto for that, like if you're a team that thinks they can be the best in the East, make a play for Kawhi. Now with LeBron out west, the East is wide open. And obviously Spurs fans love the idea of the Spurs trading him out East. The problem obviously then is, if you're a team out East, would Kawhi sign there long-term after this year? Or is he just gung-ho on going to Lakers? And how the Lakers play the rest of this free agency period? And, will they have enough cap space left over to potentially sign Kawhi Leonard. From the Spurs' vantage point, again, what are they going to end up getting for Kawhi? And do they let this thing play out? Bring him in a training camp, still on the roster, sort of in a wait and see approach with him, and can you be on your best behavior, and then we might offer you the Supermax, that kind of stuff. But obviously there's a Supermax deadline, so there's a point in time where the Spurs have to make a decision on him. That was going to be an interesting deadline. If you know what that deadline is, post it in the comments, please. Let's see here. Chris Castor says Boston better off for Kyrie and Jaylen Brown. Don't think that's going to happen. Vanji Bustos says Kawhi said he'll sit out if he doesn't get a trade. That according to Stephen A. Smith. Here's the funniest part. So there was a point in time where Spurs fans didn't believe anything that was said from anybody on any of the networks. So, if ESPN, Jalen Rose said that there was friction between the Spurs and Kawhi Leonard, and everybody who's Spurs fans were like, no, not a chance in hell. And now it's gone completely the opposite way, where Stephen A. Smith says on First Take that Kawhi's gonna sit out this year if they don't trade him, and now everybody believes it like it's the gospel. And I'm not saying it's not true. It certainly makes sense, but I also don't necessarily think that's the case. And again, he can say he's injured, but you almost have to wonder if there would then have to be a mediator from the NBA side to look at him and say, is this a legitimate injury? Like, I don't even know how the NBA would have to handle that. But if the team says he's not hurt, the player says he is hurt, and that's why he's sitting out, that was basically all last season. The Spurs said he's fine. Kawhi said he wasn't, so he sat out, but the Spurs obviously didn't challenge that. I would imagine the Spurs would maybe challenge it a little bit more, or if they just let him sit out for the entire year, pay him the money, and then say, good luck returning to the NBA to your, to the same form with basically missing 150 games over 2 years. Because that's a difficult thing to do. You might even say impossible. Last time we saw Kawhi, he was really good. But if he sits out this entire year, man, it'd be tough to come back and still be an effective player at that. Mario Drake on the Around the Association radio page says, can Boston offer Jaylen Brown, Daniel Theus, and future draft picks that Danny Ainge is sitting on? They could. They could literally offer whatever they wanted for Kawhi. But here's the deal. If you're Danny Ainge, would you risk losing Jaylen Brown for 1 year of Kawhi Leonard? I don't know if I would. Especially because Danny Ainge knows better than we do if Kawhi would actually stay there long term. So, I think if, bear with me for a second, hit the share button. I think if Boston knew that they could potentially get Kawhi to stay there long term, they'd make the offer with Jaylen Brown. But they're not. I don't think they've offered. I think if Boston offered Jaylen Brown, the trade would already be done. Hit the share button. Post your comments. I'm Ari Temkin from Phantom, formerly of ESPN San Antonio. Make sure to check out the page at facebook.com/watch Phantom. Also on YouTube, on Twitch, on Periscope. Check us out all those places. Again, Phantom, F-A-N-T-O-M, the New World Order of Sports Media, broadcasting live, delivering live sports content, live sports to digital. So thank you all for being a part of it. Hit the share button and help us grow the audience for all of these shows. Derek Kincaid says on the San Antonio Spurs Spirit page, all the Spurs need is a scoring 3-guard. Who do you like, Derek? Who do you think is out there that the Spurs should make a play for? Carlos Lerma says if he sits out another year, is he still available for the Supermax with another team? No. He's only available for a Supermax with the Spurs. There's no other team that can offer him the Supermax. Fly Lattori on YouTube says if Boston tries for Kawhi, Boston should trade away Hayward, Rozier, and the Kings pick for 19. Again, I'm interested to see what, if anything, Boston has offered the Spurs. David Alejandro says, that was me. Spurs fan that didn't believe anything they heard in the reports that's now here listening to everything Stephen A. Smith as if it's the gospel. Larry Manick says Spurs fans didn't want to believe it. Of course not. Who did? And it sort of invalidated all the things we thought about Kawhi Leonard. All the perception that Kawhi Leonard had created as long as he'd been with the San Antonio Spurs. It didn't seem like something that Kawhi Leonard would do or say. or feel. Vanjie says if he says he's injured, Lakers won't want him if he stays injured. Hashtag fake injury. Lakers will want him regardless. Because who knows how the situation will play out, right? Like, the Spurs have to have a diminished market for him right now. And, you know, the only thing they can hope for potentially is an Eastern Conference team that is going to make a leap of faith. And I guess the only other thing that could potentially happen would be you get to the trade deadline and the Lakers aren't great. And so, like, Magic is just itching to make a move, and so he'd end up trading some of those assets for Kawhi at the trade deadline. Let's see here. Alex Morris says, or rather Chris Castor says, outside of the Kawhi drama, I do like the Rudy and Marco signings, and I wouldn't mind adding Tyreek Evans. Who knows? I agree on Marco and Rudy signing. Here's the deal. Rudy Gay, $10 million a year is fine. Marco Bellinelli, what is he, at $12 million a year? Like, that's fine. I mean, they're getting more scoring. I didn't really understand why the Spurs didn't add Marco Bellinelli at the trade deadline. Like, there was even a point in time where all they had to do was pick him up on waivers, and they didn't do it, which I just thought was very interesting because they could have used the scoring last year, but maybe they just didn't want to add anybody midseason. But, you know, the Marco Bellinelli signing makes sense because instant offense, guy that can shoot, you know, a high percentage shooter from three, good scorer, a guy that obviously played a meaningful role for the Spurs, you know, in the playoffs. They're obviously going to build now around LaMarcus and DeJounte Murray. It's going to be very interesting to see what kind of a leap DeJounte Murray takes in year two, or rather year two of being the starting point guard. Will Manu Ginobili be back? And then where else will the Spurs go in free agency? You know, that's going to be very interesting because, you know, if they don't sign Kawhi to the Supermax, they're going to have some cap space to work with, obviously. Alex Morris says the Supermax was created by the NBA to keep big free agents with their current teams to prevent another KD situation. Chris Castor says Tyreek Evans would be a nice pickup. Absolutely. Tyreek's a good two-way player, good scorer, probably underrated. I wonder what the market will be for him. Obviously, he's going to visit the Lakers. That was the latest report that I heard. Also, Oklahoma City. If you're a Spurs fan, you've got to be rooting for Tyreek Evans to sign a long-term deal at big money for the Lakers because, you know, obviously the Lakers have to clear enough cap space to make Kawhi Leonard a realistic scenario. Jesse Gonzalez says, keep him as long as possible, then he'll end up going to Boston or Philly for a low-ball offer. Maybe, yeah. Derek Kincaid, as of right now, the starting lineup, it's LaMarcus at power forward, DeJounte at point guard, Rudy Gay at the small forward, Lonnie at the two, Gasol at center. Manu sixth man. Ariza would have been nice, but he was traded. He wasn't traded. He signed with the Suns. He was not traded. He was a free agent. He signed with the Suns. Derek Kincaid says, I believe in R.C. Buford. As you should. You should believe in R.C. and in Pop. I agree with your starting five except for Lonnie Walker at the two. He's not going to start. No way. Unless he just blows the Spurs away in summer league and then training camp and, you know, and then preseason. I just don't see any way. I mean, Danny Green's your starting two guard. Remember, Danny Green opted in. Yeah, there is no way Lonnie Walker starts for the Spurs. It's going to be LaMarcus, DeJounte, Danny Green, Gasol, and Rudy Gay. That's your presumptive starting five right now with Bellinelli, Lonnie Walker, and Manu potentially coming off the bench. And remember, I mean, where they are right now, are they better than they were last year, where they were, the 7th seed? Norma Hernandez says hello. Norma, how are you? Chris Bennett says blow it up for San Antonio. Here's the thing. I've been talking about this a lot, and no. The answer to your question, short answer is, Chris, no. You don't blow it up if you're the Spurs. And the reasoning for that is, look at 2013, 2014, right? You know, they still have this championship core they believe they have. So, you know, a little, you add Danny Green here, a Boris Diaw there, all of a sudden Kawhi blossoms, and now you're back, you know, another window opens up. So I think, you know, the Spurs have proven that you don't just have to blow it up and start from scratch and go full tank mode in order to compete for championships. You know, you don't have to do that. You know, the Spurs feel like they've got some pieces. You make a move here or there. Their ability to draft has been unparalleled in the NBA in the last 2 decades. I mean, go look at the last decade of drafts in the NBA, and the Spurs consistently are drafting meaningful impact players deep into the draft. It's incredible. Carlos Martinez says, would Alex Lynn from Phoenix be a good fit for the San Antonio Spurs? He's a restricted free agent, is he not? I mean, he has drastically underperformed after being, a top 5 pick? A top 2 pick? He hasn't been great. So, I don't know. I mean, before the Spurs signed LaMarcus Aldridge, I would go on the radio and say, because I never thought the Spurs would be players for big-time free agents like LaMarcus, right? So I remember thinking, well, what about Tobias Harris, sort of an underappreciated kind of restricted free agent that they can go in and, you trust the Spurs to find a guy that's, has maybe not a great value, but that, could maximize value. So I still think that's in play for the Spurs, especially with the salary cap space they're going to have. Do they go out and test the markets with a restricted free agent? Do they try to make a trade to bring in a guy that's undervalued? Tristan Wilkins on the San Antonio Spurs Spear page. What up, Tristan? How are you? Hit the share button, everybody. Can Kawhi sit out all season if he chooses, if getting paid and not injured? We've been talking about that on the stream. I just don't know what the NBA would do. That's basically what happened last year, if you recall. The Spurs said he was fine. Kawhi said he wasn't. But obviously he was allowed to sit out and said he had an injury. I mean, if it happens again, and he says, I'm still hurt, I'm sitting out, I wonder, would the NBA be forced to do something? Would they just take him at his word? I'm not sure. I mean, it's obviously unprecedented. Doing what he did last year is basically unprecedented. And then there's the dynamic of, if you're Kawhi, that would be a horrible decision to sit out for a second straight year, because you're not going to come back as the same player. I don't care how good you are. You can't sit out 2 years like that, not play, not compete, and expect to come back and be okay. I mean, he's not Michael Jordan. He's good. He's not that good. Roger Barajas says, what's your ideal Kawhi trade to LA, Philly, knowing Kuzma, Lonzo, and Ingram are untouchable as well as Simmons, Embiid, and Fultz? Ouch. I don't know. I mean, I think any ideal trade with Philadelphia includes Fultz. I mean, I think at this point the most ideal trade would be with Boston for Kyrie. I think as the market diminishes for Kawhi, trading Kawhi to Boston for Kyrie would be the best move, because it seems like a deal that Boston would want to do. I know Kyrie's had injury issues, but he's only on a 1-year deal, but I'd still think there's probably a good chance that Kyrie would sign with the Spurs long term. That's a really good team if you've got Kyrie and LaMarcus. Obviously, now you're looking at it from a standpoint of, well, what does this mean to DeJounte Murray? But I don't know. I mean, I think if you're looking to continue to compete today, you pair Kyrie with LaMarcus. That's a good team with good scoring around him, with Danny Green and and Marco and Manu, and I mean, so who knows about what Pau Gasol has left? What a tough. It's one of the worst deals that RC Buford for the Spurs have signed, was signing Pau Gasol, and even worse, last year extending it. He could have been out of that deal after this year, and they'd have a ton of cap space to work with. Carlos Martinez says Jabari Young was on NBA TV, says there's a possibility that Kawhi might stay in San Antonio. Tony Thomas says, who gets Kawhi and what do we get for him? And look, if you follow the reports, the Spurs are not offering Kawhi the Supermax. I think that has really been the thing that's poured gasoline out of this fire. I always operated under the assumption that the Spurs were going to offer him the Supermax, as would most teams, if not all teams in the NBA, given the same circumstance. But what we've seen and heard on the reports from Woj, from ESPN, were, initially it was Kawhi's camp is still interested in the Supermax, and then the latest one which was the Spurs still going to play the long game with him and maybe get themselves in a position where they feel more comfortable offering him the Supermax. So the Spurs have not offered him the Supermax. So maybe if it's just as simple as offering the Supermax and he comes back. But, I do think the Spurs, as crazy as you might think it is, they have reservations on it. I don't think they want to go through what they just went through this past season. They did not like how his uncle and agent handled this entire season. I think they'd like to deal with more what they would conceive as legitimate representation. They don't view Dennis as being legitimate representation. I said all year I thought he was getting bad advice, Kawhi. But I don't know, if the Spurs met with Kawhi and said, hey, we need you to get rid of Uncle Dennis, we're not offering you the Supermax, I could see why he'd be pissed off. But I also love that play from the Spurs' vantage point. Because, you know what? If you're the Spurs, there's no one big player that's going to hold. There's no one player that's bigger than your franchise. I mean, George Gervin, David Robinson, Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker. There's no one, Kawhi Leonard. There's no one player bigger than your franchise. So you don't let your franchise get held hostage by this guy. So I completely understand the vantage point of the Spurs to say, we're not going to offer you the Supermax because we can't deal with Uncle Dennis anymore. And we're not Dan Gilbert and the Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron where you can just hold us hostage like this. Jesse Gonzalez says, kind of random, what about Roy Hibbert? He used to work out with Tim during the offseason when he was still an all-star. Why doesn't Timmy make a call and see if we can convince him to come back to the NBA? I think we can do something with that size for a small contract. I don't know, Jesse. I think Roy Hibbert's time in the NBA is up. Just, again, think about the playoffs. And you're playing Houston, you're playing Golden State, teams that have the ball going around like Roy Hibbert doesn't really fit in today's NBA. He can't chase defensively around the perimeter. He's basically unplayable in a playoff series. So that's the way teams are building now. And again, I think it's Golden State's not going to always be there, but having quality three-point shoot, like you're always going to have guys, even bigs, that can chase around the perimeter. I just don't know that there's a lot of teams because even look at the influx of young players coming into the league. There's just not a lot of traditional bigs. That's what it comes down to, right? Is the more traditional bigs you have, the less those guys are going to be counted on to hit shots and be around the perimeter. But now a lot of the big men that are coming to the NBA can hit threes. So that only puts the onus on big men around, that are defending, have to be able to chase around the perimeter. And if not, they're going to put you in pick and roll to death until they just take you to the rim or get open shots consistently from three. So it's tough. That's kind of why Roy Hibbert's not playing in the NBA now. Yeah, John Dyer. Sean Adams would be taking bets with Spurs fans on who would have a better season. James Rodriguez says, right now we're surely not any better than last year, especially with Gasol. I don't agree with that. I think the Spurs are in better position right now than they were last year. I mean, first of all, the drama with Kawhi, like that alone was a major hindrance for this season. So just not having any of that drama, right? Like, and even if he's on the roster for this team this year, it's not going to be the same drama because either he's going to remove himself from the team and he's going to sit out and, that will play out. But like I think the drama won't be even close to what it was, because there'll be certain expectations once going into the season. Either he's not going to play or he's going to play, whatever it is. So I just think like not having that drama and that alone would be a huge, boost from the Spurs. I like I think obviously they lacked offense last year. Their scoring was just not very good. So you had Marco Bellinelli, you had more scoring. Rudy Gay has sort of been a disappointment, but you're only paying him $10 million. Rudy Gay on a $10 million contract is fine. So I don't know. I mean, I certainly think they're in better position. Longinos Campos III says hi. Hi, Mr. Campos. How are you, sir? I want to thank everybody for joining us on Phantom, the new world order of sports media, delivering live content to the digital space. You see the LeBron James contract scroll through the bottom of the screen. 4-year, $154 million deal. This sucks for the Spurs for a lot of reasons. It sucks for the Western Conference because you add, as opposed to, Golden State was great, Houston was great. Now you add the Lakers to the mix with LeBron. They're great. And it's a long-term play for LeBron. His contracts with Cleveland were 2-year deals with an opt-out in the second year. So he never made that long-term commitment to Cleveland. So he constantly held the Cavs' feet to the fire so that they had to always make moves to be thinking about winning championships. With the Lakers, LeBron reportedly met with Magic, and according to the Lee Jenkins article that came out from Sports Illustrated today, which if you haven't, go check it out. It's fantastic, as only Lee Jenkins can do. Apparently between LeBron and Magic, LeBron was basically saying, hey, I'm signing this 4-year contract. So don't feel in a rush to make a move. Make moves that make us better. Don't do addition by subtraction. And I wonder why. Was this him learning from going to Cleveland, getting rid of Wiggins? Was this him sort of looking at this and saying, okay, I'd rather have a team that's consistent with young players that we can grow together, that I can be a leader of, or if it's just that he always wanted to be, pushing forward with Cleveland. To me, I think he learned a little bit. Now, I was on the record when the Cavs made the trade Wiggins for Love. I said that was a bad deal. I thought Wiggins, at the very least, is a great complementary piece to LeBron, a lockdown defender on the wing. I didn't like that deal. The idea of, well, we got to be competing for championships now, like your team has to grow together anyways. And it's not like Kevin Love had been in the playoffs before with Minnesota. So, so either he learned from that experience and, he understood this is how you build, or, he's just more willing to give the long-term commitment to the Lakers, and he wasn't obviously willing to do that for Cleveland. Longinos Campos III says trade Kawhi and get it over with. I think, man, I don't know what the trade market looks like for him now, but trading him right now would seem like not a prudent move. Because I think before LeBron makes his decision, I wonder what the best deal on the table was by the Lakers to the Spurs. I wonder if at any point they offered Ingram, Kuzma, and 2 future first-round picks. Because certainly I think, if the Spurs could go back, they'd make that move, if it was ever offered. But I imagine now Ingram's off the table, Kuzma's off the table if you're the Lakers. Because you've gotten LeBron to come. You're going to get other stars. And obviously if you're the Spurs, you want to wait and see, because Kawhi's looking at this like saying, hey, I'll sit out and then go to Lakers next year. Well, you can't if the Lakers don't have any money, don't have the contract, the salary cap space available. Derek Kincaid said Pop lost his wife, Kawhi drama, Tony Parker not playing good, and underwhelming Mills. Yeah. Agreed. Tough. NBA free agency has become riveting television. It's insane how popular it's become, and the NBA has done a great job in celebrating this part of their season. It's being a humongous component of the NBA. John Rexroth says LeBron made his decision. He's on his way to the Lakers. That's right. And look, early on in the season, I thought there might be a shot that LeBron would come to San Antonio. Obviously, when the Kawhi drama starts, it looked like it wasn't going to happen at all, because LeBron's not going to come here if Kawhi's not here. And I think there then became a point where it's obvious that LeBron wanted to go to the Lakers. And I think the allure of helping to rebuild the Showtime Lakers is probably too big and too much of a lure for LeBron to pass up. So I think LeBron probably had his mind made up for a long period of time that he was going to the Lakers, even though he probably thought on it. But it's going to be this sets up to make the rest of the offseason very, very interesting, because LeBron did what I said he should do, which is don't wait on Paul George, don't wait on Kawhi, make your move. And if you're Boston, look at what just happened with Paul George in Oklahoma City. If you're Boston or Philadelphia, don't you make a move now for Kawhi Leonard to put you over the top? Because the East is wide open. Or if you're Toronto, look at all these teams that have been competing and saying, we can't beat LeBron. Now it's wide open. No LeBron in the East. All this competition out West. If you're Philadelphia or Boston or Toronto, don't you have to make a move now for Kawhi? And even if he doesn't give you the long-term assurances that he's going to be there long-term, look at Paul George in Oklahoma City. He said he was going to go to the Lakers, and now he ends up signing a long-term deal with Oklahoma City. Fortune favors the bold, Eastern Conference. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure to join us again tomorrow, 12 o'clock Central, 1 o'clock Eastern. Coming up next, it's noon o'clock with TJ Carpenter. Again, hit subscribe at facebook.com/WatchPhantom, or check us out on YouTube. Thank you for watching, everybody.